So I'm going to be building this bookshelf today. I'll be honest, I don't know how much of me building this bookshelf you're actually going to see, because it looks a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. So, you know, that's a thing. Whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to talk to you about the books I've read at the start of this year thus far. Well, the 2 I've read and the 2 I'm currently reading and should finish by the time this video comes out. First things first, I think IKEA has done irreversible damage to the furniture sector, because obviously this is a flat packed thing. These are the instructions I have. Like, it's just, I hate when it's just pictures. And do you know what I don't hate when there's pictures? Books. More books need pictures, because none of the books I've read have pictures in them. So thus far this year I've read 2 books. I've read the 3rd book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, Before Your Memory Fades, which is, I thought it was interesting. I'm sorry for the skrunkling. I thought it was interesting because it was the first one that's set outside of the Tokyo Cafe. And I quite like that they basically introduced this omniscient character, which is Nagare's mother, where her usage of the time travel in Before the Coffee Gets Cold is really interesting, because she uses it to actually sort of interfere in people's lives, unlike Nagare, who was just like, time travel, huh? That's how I imagine he speaks. Overall, I think it's a good addition to the series. I'm looking forward to reading the 4th one, which I'll probably read next month. But yeah, I think it's a decent book. I thought it was an interesting departure from the previous 2 books, and you know, the different use of time travel I quite like. The next book I finished was When Dimple Met Rishi, the first one, and I'll be honest, I'm usually very positive when it comes to my book reviews, but oh my god, like, I just don't think it's for me. I love a romance book, I love a romance story in my books. You know, that's why This Is How You Win the Time War or something is why I love that book, the sort of visceral romance in that. This, I'll be honest, I would have rather just watched a Bollywood movie. I felt like, I don't know, I was looking on Goodreads and it had a decent review, but maybe it's just the kind of people it appeals to. I think it appeals to a younger audience than me, who are still sort of finding their footing when it comes to the kind of books they like. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't think it's the kind of book I like. And I also don't think I was the target audience. You know, I'm a nearly 27-year-old man. I don't think I was the audience this book was written for.
You don't say.
I felt like it leaned a little bit too much into stereotypes. It tried very hard to make Dimple different, unique. I'm not like other girls was kind of the vibe I got from her throughout the entire book. And Rishi also was just the stereotype of like ratty little brown boy. Like his brother was so much cooler, I think. And I get it, like Sanskar, Paramba was kind of Rishi's thing. But you know, he grow up, dude. Like, you're 18 in the book. Grow up. Normally, I would say, oh, maybe I'll give the 2nd book a chance, but I'll be honest, I'm not. It's just not for me. It's not something I would read, and I've got so many books to read, I might as well read the other ones. I should have mentioned this earlier in the recording, so it's got to be out of line where it should be, but I decided I'm going to, you know, record myself building this after I do this part, and I'm going to cut in footage in between, because I can't multitask that well, and this is going to take me forever to build, I'm not going to lie. So you're not going to see the entire build process. Now, on to what I'm actually reading at the moment. I'm currently reading Crime and Punishment, and I'll be honest, my crime was deciding to read Crime and Punishment, and thus the punishment is reading Crime and Punishment. I literally outlined in my last video that I can't read classics, and thus I've decided to read a classical book, a book that also was written in Russian. It's a little bit easier to understand, I think, than the stuff that was originally written in English, like old-time English, because they don't translate those for their current audience now. They just leave them as they are when they're English books. But, you know, when it's a foreign language, they do sometimes update the language a little bit. But still, I'm I'm struggling. Thus far, it's quite interesting, you know, seeing how the main character, whose name I'm just not going to try and pronounce, thinks about people around him, and kind of, he's kind of it's a bit of a dickhead, isn't he? Thus far. I mean, I kind of can see where we're going, and he is a dickhead. I think the whole purpose is he's a dick. But yeah, it's an interesting read thus far. I think I'm about 100 pages in, which is decent for a 600 something page book, which, I'll be honest, I struggle with 300 pages nowadays. 600? By God. I'm going to take that one slow and steady. I don't think I'll finish that in January. I think that's going to be I will read this when I've got a long section of time to read, maybe when I'm on the train, or maybe when I'm, you know, just feeling like sitting and reading for a couple hours. I think that is the time for me to read Crime and Punishment. I just feel it requires a lot of my brain power as well to read, so I don't want to be doing it when I was like, oh, okay, quickly pick it up and read 10-15 pages or something. I really need to get into it when I'm reading it, like take a couple of times reading a page maybe if I need to. So that's kind of my thoughts on Crime and Punishment. You know, obviously it's Dostoevsky, it's like one of those books where they're like, you must read this before you die. Must I? I don't know. Maybe. Thus far it's, you know, an enjoyable read, but maybe when it hits the fan, I'll be like, oh my god, read this. This is the greatest piece of literature ever written. Who knows? The second book I'm reading is Voices from the West Bank, which is a book where these two people from, I think, the University of Glasgow have gone to the West Bank to interview people, to understand life and occupation. Young people especially, because most of the population are, I think, under 20 or something. They're young, they're so young. And some of the stories are just heartbreaking. What it's like living under occupation, the brutality these people face is unprecedented. Very few places on earth are like that at the moment. The stories are heartwarming. There's people, you know, with their dreams who are trying to achieve their dreams, but also devastating because of the brutality of the occupation, because of the lack of opportunity for people in the occupation. It is like, you know, again, I read this really good video, I watched this really good video on TikTok from Pal Folklore. I'll try and link it somewhere, or I'll put a screenshot here somewhere. But it was basically, they were talking about when there are so many people dying, it's hard to quote-unquote care, where people are starting to become numbers. All you're saying is the numbers, you're not talking about the people. So they were like, every day try and find a story of people from Palestine, you know, in this case Gaza, what's happening. Also, there's so many of these bloody shelves, there's so many of them. In this case Gaza, try and find a story from people from Gaza so you can see their story. You can see them as humans, not numbers. You see them as people who are dying, not just the statistics we're seeing coming out. Obviously, looking at the statistics as well is important, but just seeing them as human beings, kind of the way we've connected with the likes of Motaz and Bisan. Try and see them as people, and I think this book does that really well. You see the Palestinians as people, you see their struggles, you see their dreams and their goals. I'm about halfway through it, I think, so there's a lot more. There's a particular family that it kind of follows quite closely as well, and just their history is like, oh my god, like I barely know my family's history past 2 generations. These people are talking about the effect the occupation has had on 3 generations of their family, and what their family was like before the occupation, and it's... I got through the books I was reading really fast, so there's gonna be footage interspersed of me building, hopefully, and I'll voice over the building during those and cut this together somehow. And then I'm gonna cut to the final thing now. Ladies and gentlemen, the bookshelf. It's empty, I know, but I promise by the next episode it'll be full. Most happily, I'm glad these will be covered. I might move it a bit so this is covered too. But yeah, it's built. So yeah, I've read 4 books. Well, I've read 2 and I'm reading 2. 2 of them I think are going to be good. One of them definitely not good. The other one I'm struggling. I'm struggling, man. But I'm not going to struggle to fit all my books. Because I finally have a place to put books instead of leaving them piled around the house to the dismay of everyone else. But now, there's a bookshelf. I've read 4 books. If you've read any of the books I've mentioned, let me know. I'll leave links to all of them in the description down below. If you can find them, if I'm an independent bookseller or just your local bookshop, buy them from there first instead of getting them from the links below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you read a great book today.